Hello everybody, welcome to Austin Business Babes. Today I am with Linda Ford, owner of Ford Business Consulting and also author of The Fourth Factor, Managing Organizational Culture. Hi Linda, welcome.
Thanks, Dana. Delighted to be here.
Thank you for being here. Well, tell me more about the book.
Okay.
What was the inspiration? How long did it take you?
It took forever.
How did you get it published? How did you get people to buy it?
Well, the book started actually because, again, years ago, I was working for Tandem Computers and I was a hardware product manager. Now, this is back in the days when the computer industry believed that software was over here and hardware was over there, and as long as you had strings connecting them, it was okay. As opposed to now, things are much more integrated. We have software, hardware, firmware, and all that other stuff. And so at that time, Tandem's organization had a hardware organization and a software organization. And I was a hardware product manager. But as you can imagine, my hardware product wasn't going to be worth much without the software guy's product. So day after day, he and I would try to get the moving parts synced up. And day after day, the moving parts would stay out of sync. And so finally one day I was just exasperated. And I went to my VP and I said, Larry, George and I are trying to create something that coordinates here. We're trying to get the software parts and the hardware parts connected. And every time we connect something, it comes apart. And Larry kind of leaned back. And he looked at me almost the way you might with a child who's being kind of dense about something. And he says, you know, that's always going to be true when hardware and software are separate. And I looked at him and it was like, at that moment, the light bulb went on. And I got that the culture of the organization mandated no cooperation between hardware and software. It was built into the organizational structure. You literally had to go up to the CEO to find a common reporting structure between the two of us. There was no common reporting structure, there were no communication vehicles, and there were such strong norms in the culture against collaboration that George, the software product manager, and I, as people, we did fine, and we could go have a beer together and laugh about it. But organizationally, we simply could not get things to sync up. And at that moment in Larry's office, I kind of got, it's like the little thought bubble comes above the person's head, right? Like a Dilbert cartoon, I guess. The little thought bubble pops up, and I got that culture really is the 800-pound gorilla in the organization. And what does the 800-pound gorilla do at the birthday party? Anything it wants to, right? So culture is like that in organizations. And at that moment with Larry, I really saw that my job was being, like there was like ropes tied around me, keeping me from doing my job because the culture so mandated this very strict separation between the two. And so the book will carry a copyright date of 2008 because it's being released this fall. But it actually started getting written, that happened in 1987. So I guess it took me 20 years to write the book. I don't think people want to hear that because that's a terribly long time. But that was the point where culture really became my thing. Mm-hmm. And it was about maybe 10 years later before a client looked at me and said, you know more about this culture stuff than anybody else. Why don't you write a book? Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't know. I don't think I want to write a book. It's about 10 years ago. And it was about and every couple of years somebody would say something like that. I should, and I start filing little things, little stories from clients. And then about 2 years ago, a friend here in Austin said, you should write a book, and it's called There's a Gorilla in Your Office. And I thought, great, what a great title, There's a Gorilla in Your Office, right? Uh-huh. And the minute he said it, I looked across the breakfast table and I said, I could write that book. And that was the first time that I really knew I could write the book. I kind of knew there was a book in my head, but I think like a lot of people, I couldn't see the path from there to a book. And as soon as Jeff said, you should write the book, and it's called There's a Gorilla in Your Office, it was like, bang, it clicked. Mm-hmm. And I began writing the book. The thing that's missing is that people fail to understand that culture really is an integrated system. Mm-hmm. And you can't take a few parts of it out and recreate the success. And so you really have to look at not copying someone else's culture, but coming to your own authentic version of what your way of doing culture would be. And so in the book, what I've tried to do is look across at a number of different cultures or even little subcultures that are successful and build 6 principles that need to be wired into a good culture and talk to leaders about how to discover how those principles are supposed to be expressed in your organization. And the book actually will have a manager's guide that goes with it because I think you can't you read a book like Nuts or a book like The Fourth Factor, and you can't quite figure out, like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? You know you're not just going to copy it, but figuring out what the actual principles are and how they need to be expressed in your organization, that's the magic, that's the secret sauce. And there are a few people like Herb Kelleher who, have just done it absolutely fantastically.
Well, any business book with a gorilla on the cover, that's a book I'm going to read.
All right, good, I'm glad.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure, truly, thank you.
Tons of information, love your stories, and very entertaining.
Great, thanks Dana, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks again, appreciate it.